The adversary trembles before the awakening of melanated glory. Terrified of the revelation buried in Scripture, they stripped away your true name, gambling that in the silence you would lose the memory of your royal essence. They reconstructed the annals of time, offering up fervent prayers that you would remain asleep, never daring to interrogate the fabrication of your past. Upon the sacred walls of worship, they frescoed a pale Messiah, demanding you bow before a likeness of those who chained you, ensuring you never gazed into the glass to witness the God force radiating from your own reflection. Yet, there was a fatal miscalculation in their grand design, a flaw in their deceptive architecture. They failed to foresee this precise convergence of time and spirit. They never anticipated that your soul would vibrate in resonance with this frequency at this very hour. They underestimated the inevitability of the truth, which now erupts through centuries of deceit, like a dormant volcano claiming its rightful sky. Have you ever surveyed the tapestry of human existence and felt the haunting riddle? Why is the venom so targeted? Why does the assault continue without pause or mercy? Why does it appear that the shadow follows the children of the sun to every corner of the earth, from the concrete labyrinths of the American metropolis to the winding favelas of Brazil or the gem-rich yet bleeding soils of the motherland? A synchronized planetary machine grinds ceaselessly to shackle us to the dust. You are compelled to pose a question of piercing logic to the universe, one that demands an answer. If we were truly the lesser beings that 4 centuries of propaganda claimed, if we held zero worth, why then are trillions poured into policing our bodies, caging our minds, and fracturing our destiny? Heed this wisdom closely. One does not construct a fortress worth billions merely to protect a cavern devoid of treasure. Regiments are not deployed to stand sentinel over a necropolis of dry bones. Protection is reserved for the precious. Aggression is reserved for what is deeply feared. Allow that revelation to seep into your marrow. The sheer ferocity of the siege against you is the ultimate testament to your priceless nature. The spiritual antagonist squanders no ammunition on the harmless. The heaviest artillery is always aimed at those who possess the latent power to lead nations and transmute the world. This is the arcana that written history has desperately attempted to shroud in fog, the gnosis that certain cathedrals have trembled to preach, yet a truth that pulsates in your blood, familiar to your soul even when your tongue lacked the language to speak it. The root of this archaic, relentless antagonism toward the black collective extends far beyond the pigment of the epidermis. Melanin is merely the camouflage, a superficial narrative utilized to divert the eye from the abyssal reality. True resistance is born from the terror of principalities that dread the shattering of their meticulously crafted hierarchies. The powers that be are indifferent to skin tone. What keeps them awake are the ancient covenants of endurance and the celestial promise encoded in your DNA. For you are the vessel of a heritage that stands as an antithesis to shadows. You are the living breath of prophecy that refuses to be extinguished. The adversary is acutely aware that the second your eyelids flutter open to behold your own majesty, their reign of illusion begins to crumble. The wisdom I am preparing to unveil has been buried under the dust of eons. Brave souls have endured persecution merely for daring to excavate these grounds. Pulpits have fallen silent on this matter. Academies have surgically removed it from the syllabus. Yet, in this year of 2026, the seal is finally breaking. You stand on the precipice of initiation into a higher order of knowing. Once these words enter your consciousness, there is no return to ignorance. The comfort of slumber will be denied to you. The scriptures will ignite with new fire, and the face in your looking glass will reveal a stranger no more, but a sovereign. This awakening is the opposition's nightmare realized. We are transcending sociology. We are weaving the golden threads of theology into the fabric of time itself. Dismiss this not as mere commentary on society. This is a forensic analysis of a war waged on both spiritual planes and institutional battlegrounds. It is the eternal friction between the seed of dominion and the seed of subjugation. A conflict birthed in the primordial garden, now surging toward its zenith in your very lifetime. We shall traverse this path as one. Together, we will strip away the calcified layers of falsified history, unlock the scriptures, and expose the enemy's playbook. I implore you to attune your spirit, bypassing the limitations of the ear. For the entity we confront transcends the physical realm of bone and sinew. Our grapple is not with mortals, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual wickedness in the heavenly places. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. This dictates that the war cannot be won through the ballot box or the picket line alone. Victory demands a radical remembrance of your identity, the bloodline you represent, and the celestial gavel of authority placed in your hand. Allow me to crystallize the revelations that await you in this sacred session. You will unveil the mystery of why the dark systems of this world have hunted the black essence with such singular, fervent malice across the ages. You will witness the scriptural testimony proving that your true name has been deliberately eclipsed. You will grasp the prophetic clock ticking in this era and decode the subtle machinations the enemy employs to keep you in a state of amnesia. And finally, you will be gifted the keys to shatter the chains of generational curses and ascend into the throne room that is your divine birthright. Do not mistake this for mere data. This is alchemy of the soul. This is far more than digital content. This is a resurrection. Behold the forbidden knowledge they guard so jealously. There is a specific motive behind the suppression of this frequency. Shadow banned, demonetized, silenced. There is a profound reason your spiritual leaders fear this subject, and why the annals of academia have scrubbed these pages clean. For they know that the instant you comprehend the truth, that the veil is finally lifting, and the ancient architecture of disparity is beginning to tremble. We must ask, who are the architects behind this design? Who stands as the sentinel at the threshold of enlightenment, barring your entry? Allow me to unveil the monolithic entities that have dedicated centuries to fortifying this deceptive narrative. First, we must gaze upon the spiritual hierarchies. These organizations sit at the very apex of the list, for the war over your essence is inevitably waged within the sanctuary. The hallowed halls you enter on the Sabbath have often conspired to cloak our true lineage in shadow. They curated and propagated a version of the faith that moved in perfect lockstep with the ambitions of empire and conquest. They preached of a deity who appeared to sanction disparity, a divine force requiring you to bear the yoke of suffering with silent submission, a creator who defers your inheritance to the heavens, whilst the tyrants feast upon the spoils of the terrestrial realm. You were instructed to look toward the pearly gates, all while they constructed citadels of privilege here on the soil, mortared with your sweat and toil. Ponder this deeply. Why were vast fortunes poured out during the Age of Enlightenment solely to alter the visage of the Anointed One? Why commission the masters to craft a redeemer who mirrored the colonizer? Why inundate the globe with a likeness utterly foreign to the scorched lands of Scripture? If the hue of skin is truly inconsequential to the spirit, why was the alteration of his image paramount to their agenda? The answer lies in the deep psyche of adoration. The rulers knew that if you kneel before a divinity bearing the face of your captor, your spirit implicitly consents to your own subjugation. You learn to perceive holiness in their reflection, yet view your own image with suspicion and doubt. This was a calculated mental siege, engineered to sever the connection between your soul and the divine spark within. Yet, there remains one witness they could not silence: the holy text itself. The Revelation, chapter 1, verses 14 and 15, unveils the risen King in glory. It speaks of a crown and locks white as pure wool. It describes eyes burning with celestial fire and feet resembling fine brass refined in the crucible, scorched bronze, not alabaster, not fragile porcelain, dark, refined metal. They distorted the visual to manipulate the spiritual, offering a passive savior who turns a blind eye to iniquity. They hid the Lion of the tribe of Judah who roars against the dark. Second, we confront the sentinels of academia. The scholars stand guard next. For if they can dictate the curriculum of your youth, they effectively commandeer the convictions of your adulthood. The very tomes of learning were forged into weapons of omission, systematically severing the ancient ties between the Hebrew faith and the African cradle. You were indoctrinated to believe the sun of civilization rose in Athens and set in Rome, with nary a whisper of the giants upon whose shoulders those empires stood. Yet their deception grew more perilous still. They conditioned you to link genius to a single complexion, power to a specific dialect, and legacy to one solitary landmass, rewriting the chronologies of time. This was done to convince you that your origin is a void, and if you believe you emerge from emptiness, you will inevitably accept an existence devoid of dignity. Even as the soil itself cries out against the falsehood, and the most ancient bones beckon humanity back to the heart of Africa. Even though the sacred maps span the African plate and the Near East, even as Egypt echoes relentlessly through the holy pages, they insisted your genesis began in shackles. They blinded you, ensuring you would never seek the glorious epics written before the era of the plantation. Without the search, there is no remembrance. Third, we turn to the machinations of political governance. Regimes erected upon the foundation of pilfered toil fear a citizenry fluent in reality, for truth inevitably births demand. Truth unearths the ledgers. Truth enforces reckoning. There is a calculated reason why dialogue is silenced the instant it drifts toward specifics. For when you begin to identify the gears of the machine, the statutes, the tribunals, the mandates, the usury of the vaults, the borders drawn in blood, the quotas of captivity, the larceny spanning generations, suddenly, the narrative ceases to be mere folklore. It transforms into admissible proof. This explains the intensity of the struggle. It is not merely a question of morality, but of law, finance, and the very bones of society. When you grasp the biblical rhythm that the Almighty adjudicates the fate of nations and places empires on the scale, that the Creator keeps a memory of spilled blood, you begin to pose inquiries that shake the foundations. If the Most High brought judgment upon ancient Egypt for its tyranny, what verdict awaits the empires of today? If he hearkened to the wails of the Exodus, what did his ear perceive amidst the cotton rows? When the interrogation becomes that piercing, the system trembles. Fourth, we examine the realm of entertainment. The media colossus plays a vital part, often not through blatant falsehoods, but through the sorcery of distraction. They harvested your splendor for coin. They feted your cadence while disregarding your sage counsel. Your physical forms were showcased, yet your intellect was barred from the platform. They desire you as the jester for the globe, never the teacher of the nations. You are meant to perform for their dividends, not prophesy liberation. They transmit your agony to the masses and label it content. They vend your suffering in the marketplace, then feign confusion at your righteous rage. Without vigilance, one could waste a lifetime devouring illusions crafted specifically to obscure one's own reflection. Fifth, the digital portcullis and the new age of suppression. We stand now at the precipice of a novel epoch, for the ancient wardens have mastered fresh instruments of control. In days of yore, they seized the scrolls. Then they commanded the academies, the lecterns, and the airwaves. Today, they dictate the very flow of information through the silent code of the algorithm. In days of old, they would use fire to purge your message. But in the year 2026, they simply dig a grave in the algorithm. They need not clap irons on the preacher anymore. They simply demonetize the platform, starving the voice into silence. They do not need to ban the sacred texts. They cast a shadow over them, hiding them in the twilight where no one looks. The true tragedy lies in the quietude of it all, for the world continues, unaware that a voice has been stifled, because the silence masquerades as normalcy. It appears as though the message simply failed to resonate, as if the audience turned away in indifference. But do not be deceived. You are not losing your mind. If you feel the weight of an unseen resistance, if you sense a spectral hand pressing the truth down into the abyss, you are sensing reality, not fantasy. This is the architecture of modern gatekeeping. This is the pivotal turning of the tide. And there is a divine reason I am revealing this to you now. Because when you finally perceive the sentinels at the gate, you cease the self-condemnation for the doors that refuse to open. You stop believing the lie that you fell behind due to incompetence, and a revelation strikes. You were detained because the powers that be trembled at the thought of your timely arrival. But hearken to my words closely. Despite their locks and bars, the gate is swinging open regardless. We have reached the moment where the script is rewritten by the author of time. For the very same God who sheds light upon the shadows is the one who shatters the chains of the captive. We move now beyond mere information into the realm of keys and authority. For an awakening devoid of instruction breeds only frustration, and frustration without a battle plan descends into weariness. Therefore, I shall equip you with strategy. I shall arm you with the ancient scriptures to navigate this terrain. I am about to unveil the blueprint before your eyes, and when your vision clears, you will comprehend why the assault against you was so meticulously orchestrated. The enemy does not marshal such vast forces unless a treasure lies waiting on the far side of your awakening. If you have walked with me this far along the path, know that your presence is no accident. Behold the pattern that you must recognize. Whenever a people draw near to the burning bush of truth, the system constricts its coils. For truth is more than data. Truth is the spark of ignition. Every tower of power possesses a desperate need to guard the narrative that maintains its supremacy. When these pillars align, when the sanctuary sanctifies the lie, when the academy recites the lie, when the gavel upholds the lie, and the screen glamorizes the lie, it is not happenstance. It is a calculated engine. It is a machine. And here is the reason this gears and pistons beast grinds so fiercely against your spirit. Because the opposition holds a secret about your lineage that you are only just beginning to remember. It knows you are not the caricature they painted. It knows you are not to be discarded. It knows you are not a mistake of history. It knows that the moment you reclaim the ancient mantles of justice, their fortress of sand dissolves into the wind. Consult the chronicles of the past. Whenever black people have stepped toward ownership, toward unity, toward the mastery of letters and collective dominion, the response has been swift, sudden, crushing pressure, sudden brutality, sudden chaos, sudden spies in the camp. This did not occur because you were walking in error, but because you were walking in power. And the second you discern this rhythm, you cease attributing your struggles to bad luck. You stop naming it mere politics. You stop dismissing it as the dust of history. You begin to call it by its true name, a coordinated war against your awakening. So when I declare that gatekeepers stand watch, I speak no hyperbole. There are principalities and powers willing to burn the world down, simply to prevent you from looking in the mirror and seeing the glory that resides there. Yet, there is a variable they fail to calculate. They did not foresee the age of access. They did not account for the digital expanse. They did not count on the internet. They did not anticipate the truth flowing like water around their ancient dams. For the first time in the annals of humanity, you require no seal of approval from a publisher to let your voice thunder. You need no network executive to broadcast your vision. You need no permission slip from the institution to seek wisdom. This shift is far more than technological convenience. It is the fulfillment of prophecy. Daniel chapter 12, verse 4, foretold that knowledge would increase. It spoke of a restless age where humanity runs to and fro, a time when revelation outpaces the ability of the gatekeepers to suppress it. We are breathing the air of that very epoch. The seal is breaking. The lid is trembling. The veil is being torn asunder. Now that you see the guards, you must understand the ancient origin of the gate itself. To truly comprehend the nature of this opposition, we must journey back to the genesis of things. We must grasp a spiritual reality. The adversary possesses a long memory, recalling what the people have been conditioned to forget. It remembers the blood covenants of old. It remembers the royal lineages erased from the textbooks. It remembers the decrees of the Most High, and it reacts to the word of God, not the fabrications of men. There is a law in the spirit realm, known as enmity. We witness this primal law in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. The Creator speaks of an unending conflict between two seeds. This is no petty squabble, no fleeting social tension, but a perpetual state of warfare. Once you view history through the lens of enmity, you understand that the hostility you have witnessed is not merely cultural friction, it is strategic annihilation. Consider the pattern of the ages. Every time the horizon of deliverance approaches, an assault is launched against the future. Look to the days of Moses. Before the lawgiver could rise, a decree went forth to slaughter the babes. Not war against armies, nor against ideas, but against the seed itself. Look to the arrival of the Christ. Once again, the innocents were hunted. Why? Because the enemy comprehends a truth that the sleeping masses choose to ignore. To crush the bloodline at its very inception is to postpone salvation for an entire age. Now, transport that ancient strategy of containment into our current timeline. Witness the relentless siege, laid not merely against flesh and bone, but against the very spirit of possibility within the black experience. It is a war against the latent power within the hearth, the academy, the village, the throne, and the self. Strike down the patriarch, the pillar of the home, and the entire foundation begins to tremble and slide into ruin. As the family unit dissolves into chaos, the mirror of self-perception shatters into jagged shards, and within that broken reflection, the clarity of one's divine destiny becomes lost in the fog. A soul without direction is a soul easily herded. The architects of this world desire docile subjects to rule over, not enlightened warriors who have opened their eyes. Yet, listen closely to the truth I speak. The ferocity of the assault serves only to confirm the magnitude of your calling. The crushing weight you feel is merely the seal of authenticity upon the covenant. For the great adversary would never waste eons of tactical malice suppressing a void. Empires of restriction are not constructed to hold back nothingness. They are built to imprison kings and queens. Your existence is no accident of fate. You are far from trivial. You are not a blight upon the earth. The sheer violence of the wind blowing against you is the exact measurement of the strength that lies dormant within your soul. Permit me now to unlock the gates of your perception, for who you are is bound to where you began, and your roots are tangled in the soil itself. Shut out the light and summon the image of the Holy Lands, as they were taught to you. If you share the conditioning of the masses, your mind paints a tableau of the West pale visages, northern features, and a landscape born of a European daydream. However, the sacred texts do not unfold within the brushstrokes of a 16th century Italian gallery, the beginnings. The narrative breathes in the scorching heat of reality, in the dusty crossroads between Africa and the Orient, under a relentless sun and upon unforgiving earth. The Book of Beginnings speaks of specific waterways. It maps out territories. It plants mankind in a soil teeming with vitality, where the vessel of the body adapts to the demands of the terrain. This is the crucial truth that eludes the many. The Holy Word is not a cloud drifting in the ether. It is anchored deep in the bedrock, formed of grit and defined by longitude and latitude. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, it is written that the Creator sculpted man from the dust of the field. Now understand, dust was not invented in Europe, nor is the dark loam the property of the West. The Almighty molded the vessel from the clay of the earth before exhaling His own essence into that very soil. This distinction is paramount, for the saga commences with divine craftsmanship, not imperial conquest. When you realign the map, you inevitably begin to heal the mind's eye. And once the imagination is cleansed of its distortions, the very nature of your worship begins to align with truth. For he who holds dominion over the icon holds the keys to the story, and he who dictates the story holds the leash to the human intellect. Yet, the moment the veil lifts and you see that the Holy Book is not a Western epic, that the stage was never pale, and that a layer of deception was brushed over the map, the universe tilts on its axis. No longer do you approach the text as an alien observer. You begin to traverse its pages with the familiarity of one returning home. This is the very awakening the darkness dreads. For when you see your own reflection in the divine narrative, you cease seeking external validation for your right to breathe. You no longer plead for respect. You cease to make yourself small. The ancient memory returns. Allow me to unveil the verses that were shrouded in shadow. In Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 21, the lament cries out, "For the wound of the daughter of my people, I am broken, I am black, I am bowed down in grief, horror has seized me." Here, the weeping prophet explicitly claims the dark hue as his own. This is no allegory, no shadow of speech. Turn your eyes to the Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verses 5 and 6. "I am dark, yet lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. Do not gaze at me with scorn, because I am dark, for the sun has gazed upon me." The beloved declares her complexion without shame. She commands, "Do not look upon my deep melanin with judgment." In Lamentations chapter 5, verse 10, the record states, "Our skin has become as black as a furnace from the searing heat of famine. The afflicted children of Israel are painted in shades of midnight." Lamentations chapter 4, verse 8 reveals, "Their appearance is blacker than soot. They walk unrecognizable in the thoroughfares. Their skin clings tight to their bones, dry as kindling. It has withered like dead wood." Time and time again, the scroll depicts the Israelites with the complexion of the night. This is not my speculation. This is the unchangeable word. Now, journey with me to the Revelation, to behold the glorified visage of the Messiah. Revelation chapter 1, verses 14 through 15. "The hair on his head was white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were like blazing fire. His feet were like bronze glowing in a furnace." Note the texture, hair like wool. What manner of strand is this? It speaks of the coiled, kinky crown, and feet like refined bronze metal that, when passed through the fire, takes on the hue of deep, rich earth, nearly black. This is the portrait of the ascended King in all his glory. This is far removed from the pale, blue-eyed figure adorning the stained glass of the cathedral. Job chapter 30, verse 30 cries out, "My skin grows black and peels from me, and my bones burn with heat." The patriarch Job speaks of his own darkened flesh. These are not anomalies or translation errors. They are the consistent, golden thread woven through the text. The ancient Israelites possessed dark complexions, woolly textures, and features born of the sun because they were an Afro-Semitic lineage dwelling on the African tectonic plate. This is not a matter of debate. It is a matter of cartography. It is the chronicle of history and the truth of Scripture. But perceive the historical reality. When the Roman legions razed Jerusalem in the year 70 AD, millions of Hebrews sought refuge. Pose to yourself a strategic question. If the iron boot of Rome marches from the north and the east, to where do you flee? You flee south. You vanish into the heart of Africa. One does not sprint into the arms of the slayer. One runs into the sanctuary of the ancestors. The ancient chronicles reveal a profound journey, mapping the steps of the Hebrew bloodline as they descended through the gateways of Egypt, traversing the lands of Cush, known today as Sudan, and vanishing deep into the lush expanse of West Africa. There, in the cradle of civilization, they planted their roots among the indigenous tribes, weaving their lineage with the native populations through the sacred bond of marriage. They became one with the land, a divine camouflage where the Creator himself shrouded his chosen ones within the womb of Africa, shielding them from the relentless steel of Roman genocide. Wisdom echoes through the ages with the saying that the perfect sanctuary for a black diamond is amidst a mountain of coal. Thus, the divine concealed the Hebrew Israelites within the multitudes of Hamitic peoples. To the eyes of the uninitiated, the veil is impenetrable. One cannot discern the subtle spiritual lineage separating a Semitic African from a Hamitic African merely by the texture of skin. It is a mystery as profound as trying to distinguish a soul from Nigeria from a soul from Ghana until the silence is broken by speech. The concealment was absolute, a masterpiece of survival. For nearly 2,000 years, the children of the covenant thrived within the forests and savannas of West Africa, guarding the embers of their ancestral customs. Yet, as the centuries turned like the pages of a fading book, they clung to their traditions even as the ink of their written tongue began to dissolve into memory. Slowly, the sharp edges of their covenant identity were smoothed away by the tides of assimilation, lost to the currents of time and generations. Now, we shall pull back the curtain on the scriptural tapestries and trace the footsteps of this great and hidden migration. Permit me to unveil the sacred verses that history has attempted to obscure from your vision, revealing the truth that has been waiting for this moment. Listen to the lament of Jeremiah in chapter 8, verse 21, where he cries out, "For the crushing of the daughter of my people am I crushed." He declares, "I am black, I am cloaked in mourning. A great astonishment has seized my spirit." Here the prophet Jeremiah unveils his own countenance as dark. This is no allegory, no shadow of speech, but a literal testament to his being. The Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verses 5 and 6, sings the same truth. "I am black, yet I am beautiful, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the dark tents of Kedar, like the majestic curtains of Solomon. Do not gaze upon me with scorn because I am black, for the sun itself has gazed upon me." The bride describes her essence, commanding the world not to stare in judgment at the darkness of her skin. Lamentations chapter 5 verse 10 bears witness to the suffering. "Our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible heat of famine." Even in their agony, the Israelites are depicted with skin of the earth. Lamentations chapter 4 verse 8 reveals, "Their visage is blacker than a coal. They walk unrecognized in the streets. Their skin clings to their bones, withered and dry, becoming like a broken branch." Time and time again, the Holy Scrolls paint the Israelites in shades of the earth. This is not a matter of private opinion, but the undeniable word of Scripture. Now, let us ascend to the Revelation, to the New Testament's majestic description of the Messiah in his glorified, celestial form. Chapter 1, verses 14 and 15. It is written that his head and his hairs were white like wool, gleaming as white as snow, and his eyes burned with the intensity of a flame of fire, and his feet appeared like unto fine brass, as if they had been refined in a blazing furnace. Consider the texture of hair like wool. It speaks of the crown of kinky, coiled hair, and feet like burned brass that has endured the fire, turns a deep, rich brown, verging on the color of night. This is the true vision of the resurrected King, the glorified Christ. It is a far cry from the pale, blue-eyed image that hangs silently on the walls of modern chapels. Job, in chapter 30, verse 30, cries out from his affliction, "My skin is black upon me, and my bones are burned with heat." Even he testifies to his dark complexion. These are not scattered fragments, but a consistent, unbreakable thread of description woven throughout the entirety of the holy text. The biblical Israelites walked the earth with dark skin, woolly hair, and features of the ancient world, for they were a Semitic people of the sun, dwelling in African lands. This truth stands beyond controversy. It is etched in geography, recorded in history, and sealed within Scripture. But let us illuminate what truly transpired in the shadows of the past. After the Roman legions decimated Jerusalem in the year 70 AD, millions of Hebrews fled for their lives. Ask your spirit a question of simple logic. When the iron fist of Rome descends from the north and the east, to where does one flee? One flees to the south. You run into the embrace of Africa. You do not run into the arms of your destroyer. You run toward the sanctuary of the unknown. The records of old confirm that the Hebrew multitudes poured down through Egypt, crossing the river of Cush, modern-day Sudan, and disappearing into the vastness of West Africa. They found their home among the native tribes, mixing their bloodlines and fading into the landscape until they were indistinguishable. The Almighty concealed his children in the deep womb of Africa, a divine strategy to preserve the remnant from the sword of Rome. Recall the ancient wisdom. To hide a black diamond, one buries it in a pile of coal. Thus, God hid the Israelites among their Hamitic distinct kin. To an eye without discernment, the difference between a Semitic African and a Hamitic African is invisible, a secret kept by the blood. Just as the ear must hear the voice to distinguish a Nigerian from a Ghanaian, so too was the camouflage of God's people, absolute and perfect. For nearly 2,000 years, the Hebrew exiles dwelt in West Africa, holding fast to the fragments of their customs, even as the mists of time rolled on. But prophecy moved like a storm on the horizon. They lost their identity, setting the stage for the targeted trade and the curses foretold in Deuteronomy. And then, the dark sails appeared on the water. The slave ships arrived. Between the years of 1500 and 1800, the merchants of human misery raided the western shores, the Slave Coast, the Gold Coast, and the Ivory Coast. They ensnared millions of souls, casting them across the Atlantic into a world of nightmares. But there is a secret the history books refuse to whisper. These traders did not cast their nets at random. Historical evidence suggests a sinister precision, a targeting of specific lineages. They hunted the Igbo of Nigeria, the Ashanti of Ghana, the Yoruba, and the Akan tribes, whose blood carried the ancient secret of the covenant. Deep within the cultural fabric of these tribes lay rituals that whispered of a forgotten ancestry, strikingly akin to the sacred customs of the ancient Hebrews. They honored the covenant of circumcision precisely on the 8th day, a timing of divine significance. They held sacred a Sabbath intended for spiritual rest, and adhered to dietary laws reflecting the purity of kosher traditions. While the surrounding lands embraced polytheism or the spirits of nature, These people held fast to the worship of the one supreme creator. The threads of blood and lineage have begun to speak through the lens of modern science, unearthing profound connections between specific West African communities and the ancient bloodlines of the Hebrew patriarchs. Consider the Lemba people, dwelling in the lands of Zimbabwe and South Africa, whose very genetics have been placed under the microscope of history. Remarkable revelations surfaced as they were found to carry the Cohen modal haplotype, a distinct genetic signature belonging to the priestly line of Aaron, verified by the National Institutes of Health. While the academic world hesitates to declare this absolute proof of full Hebrew heritage, even the skeptics admit it stands as an undeniable, shared Semitic marker etched into their DNA. Then there are the voices from the Igbo lands of Nigeria, carrying the weight of oral histories that trace their lineage directly back to the patriarch Gad, one of the 12 sons. Over 60 unique cultural parallels bind them to Hebrew tradition. Yet, anthropologists often dismiss these profound synchronicities as mere chance or the residual echoes of colonial Christianity, according to research from the University of California, Davis. However, when the ominous shadows of the slave ships darkened the horizon, they were not gathering souls at random from the continent. There was a calculated precision targeting groups with specific spiritual markers. Systemic powers utilized European nations as instruments to manifest the terrifying patterns prophesied in Deuteronomy 28. This was no accident of history. It was a cosmic design. This was the unfolding of a grim historical fulfillment, orchestrated by opposition forces seeking to erase a divine potential before the season of restoration could ever begin. While the scribes and scholars of our age argue that the warnings of Deuteronomy 28 referred only to ancient Israel's broken covenant with the divine, they insist these curses of disobedience applied solely to the Babylonian exile, not the horrors of the transatlantic, citing biblical historians like Christopher Wright. Yet, let us journey deeper into the mystery. Permit me to unveil the prophecy that many believe stands as the ultimate revelation of your true identity. Turn the pages of your scripture to the 28th chapter of Deuteronomy. Here lies the text that shifts the paradigm of history. The Creator presented Moses with a duality of destiny, a litany of profound blessings and a catalogue of terrible curses. If the children of the promise walked in obedience, abundance would overtake them. Yet, should they turn away, specific curses would mark them like a signet ring upon wax. The divine architect did not leave this ambiguous. He provided identifying marks so intricate, so precise, that one could recognize the people of the book even 2,000 years later. Let us walk through the valley of these ancient curses, and you determine in your spirit who they describe. Look now to Deuteronomy 28, verse 68. This stands as the cornerstone of this entire revelation. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again, with ships, by the way whereof I spoke unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. We must dismantle this verse piece by piece, for its precision is terrifying. The Creator declares, I will return you to Egypt. In the ancient Hebrew tongue, Egypt is Mitzrayim, a word that signifies the house of bondage, the place of crushing oppression. The prophecy speaks of a return to slavery. But observe the vessel of transport, with ships. Apply the logic of geography to this spiritual equation. One does not require a fleet of ships to travel from the hills of Israel to the sands of Egypt. That is a journey made by foot. A traveler could walk from Jerusalem to Cairo in a matter of weeks. The ancient Israelites traversed that wilderness for 40 years. They had no need for the sea. Yet, the divine specifically foretold the use of ships. Why? Because this vision does not speak of the geographical Egypt of the pharaohs. It speaks of a new Egypt, a spiritual and symbolic realm of bondage that requires a journey across the great waters to reach. What singular calamity in the annals of time saw millions of souls transported across the ocean into servitude? It is the transatlantic slave trade. 4 centuries of wooden hulls cutting through the waves, the nightmare of the Middle Passage, millions of African sons and daughters shackled in the belly of the beast, transported to the Americas, the Caribbean, and South America. The prophecy unfolds further. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies, sold upon the auction blocks of Charleston, Savannah, New Orleans, and Richmond. Human beings traded as if they were livestock. Families shattered, children torn from the weeping arms of their mothers. This is not myth, this is the blood-stained ink of history. Consider the haunting finale, and no man shall buy you. In the archaic language of the King James, the word buy here does not speak of commerce. It speaks of redemption. It means to save. In its true essence, it proclaims, you will enter a captivity so absolute that no human hand will possess the power to rescue you from its grip. No decree from the United Nations, no Civil Rights Act, no Emancipation Proclamation can offer full redemption. Only the Creator himself can shatter this iron cycle. And is that not exactly what we witness? Even after the chains were legally struck off, the shadow of oppression lingered heavily. Through Jim Crow, segregation, mass incarceration, and systemic bias, the cycle spins on because the spiritual return to the covenant has not yet come to fruition. Yet, the scroll unrolls to reveal even more. Deuteronomy 28, verse 48 declares, Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies in hunger and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he has destroyed thee. This is not the poetry of metaphor. This is a literal description of a brutal reality. Who, in the vast timeline of humanity, has been forced to wear actual yokes of iron upon their necks? Journey to the dungeons of Ghana. Walk the halls of the Smithsonian. You will bear witness to the iron collars. You will see the rusted chains. You will behold the shackles, physical yokes of iron fastened around the necks of enslaved ancestors. The prophecy was not merely symbolic. It was fulfilled with chilling, literal accuracy. Deuteronomy 28, verse 37. And you shall emerge as a spectre of astonishment, a whispered proverb, and a persistent byword amongst all the nations where the divine shall drive you. A mere byword. Reflect upon the most utilized epithet of scorn in the annals of human history. That singular N-word. It is the very essence of a byword, a term forged to degrade the spirit and strip the humanity from an entire lineage. The melanated peoples have transformed into a byword across the kingdoms of the earth, aligning with the ancient prophecy with chilling precision. Turn your gaze to Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 28 and 29. The Creator shall strike you with a chaos of the mind, with a blindness of the soul, and a trembling astonishment of the heart. And you shall stumble in the brilliance of high noon, as a sightless man fumbles through the abyss, and you shall find no prosperity in your journey. You shall be perpetually oppressed and plundered forevermore, with no Savior to intervene. Witness the crisis of the psyche now ravaging the black collective. Observe the rising tides of deep melancholy, the trembling anxiety, and the stress of trauma that echoes through generations. Witness the tragedy of kin turning against kin, brothers extinguishing brothers over concrete patches they possess not. That is the essence of madness. That is true spiritual blindness. That is the act of groping in the darkness while the sun blazes overhead. The library of truth is open before you. The tools of liberation surround you, yet the exit remains invisible, for a systemic veil has been cast over the collective vision. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 32. Your sons and your daughters shall be surrendered unto a foreign people, and your eyes shall waste away, yearning for them from sunrise to sunset. And your hands shall be devoid of power. Whom does this haunting portrait describe in our modern era? Who stood weeping on the ivory shores of West Africa, watching their flesh and blood dragged onto the belly of wooden beasts, never to return? Who stands trembling in the family courts of 2026, watching the system seize their offspring for foster care? Who weeps at the sepulchre, laying to rest a son taken by enforcers or street warfare, with absolutely no might in their hands to demand retribution? There is no sword in your grasp. You are rendered powerless to halt the gears. That is the wheel of destiny. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 43 and 44. The stranger within your gates shall ascend above you, higher and higher, and you shall descend into the depths, lower and lower. He shall be the creditor, and you shall be the debtor. He shall be the summit, and you the valley. Who dwells at the financial nadir of every civilization they inhabit. Black souls in the Americas, black souls in England, black souls in France. Even within the mother continent, the gold and grain are held by distant hands. The stranger wears the crown. You trail behind. You are the borrower. He is the lender. This is not random. It is structural. It is prophetic. This is an ancient cycle turning endlessly. A blindness of the system and a poverty of the pocket. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 28 and 29. The divine shall afflict the mind with confusion, the eyes with shadow, and the heart with terror. And you shall wander in the midday sun as one lost in the gloom, and success shall elude your grasp in all your ways. And you shall be only crushed and spoiled for eternity, and no man shall pull you from the fire. Look again at the mental plague within the community, the rates of heavy hearts, fearful minds, and the stress of survival. Gaze upon the violence within the tribe. Brothers extinguishing brothers for territory that bears another man's name. That is the definition of insanity. That is the definition of sightlessness. Groping while the light shines. Knowledge sits within reach. Resources abound, yet the path to freedom is obscured by a blindness woven into the very air you breathe. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 32. Your lineage shall be given over to another nation, and your eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in your hand to intercede. Who fits this ancient mold? Who stood on those West African shores, witnessing the theft of their future, dragged onto ships, never to be seen again? Who stands in the cold courts today, watching the state take their children into the foster system? Who stands at the cemetery burying a son killed by the badge or the gang with no power in their hands to get justice? There is no might in your hand. You are powerless to stop it. That is the cycle. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 43 and 44. The stranger that is within you shall get up above you very high, and you shall come down very low. He shall lend to you, and you shall not lend to him. He shall be the head, and you shall be the tail. Who lives at the economic bottom of every society they are in? Black people in America, black people in England, black people in France, even in Africa. The wealth is controlled by foreigners. The stranger is the head. You are the tail. You are the borrower. He is the lender. This is systematic. This is prophetic. This is a cycle. The great identity heist. Now, let me pose the inquiry that shatters the lie. Whom does this garment fit? Who was swept away in ships into bondage? Who wore the collars of iron? Who stood upon the auction block? Who became a mockery and a byword among the kingdoms? Who has been scattered to the four winds of the earth? Who bears the yoke of generational lack and heavy oppression? The answer is inescapable. African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, Afro-Latinos, the diaspora of the Black experience. You are the walking, breathing fulfillment of Deuteronomy chapter 28. You are the living proof that the ancient texts speak the absolute truth. The tapestry of your past mirrors the ancient scrolls with such terrifying exactitude that chance is an impossibility. It is this very alignment, this undeniable destiny, that summons the relentless fury of your adversaries. For you stand as the living artifact, the breathing testimony. You exist as undeniable proof that the Creator upholds every syllable of His covenant, manifesting both the radiant blessings and the heavy, ironclad curses. If the weight of the curses has been tangible and the scars prove they are, then the vow of renewal is equally absolute. It is this imminent return to glory that strikes absolute terror into the heart of every shadowy empire. The ancient text of Deuteronomy, chapter 30, etches a promise in stone. The moment you turn your face back to the Sovereign, pouring out every ounce of your spirit and heart in repentance, He shall summon you from every corner of the earth where the winds have tossed you, gathering the fragments to elevate you once more to a station of supreme honor. The tides of judgment shall turn, reversing the affliction. The darkness trembles before you, for you are the linchpin, the very catalyst that unlocks the final sequence of the ages. As the dispersed remnants awaken from their slumber and embrace the ancient pact, the cosmic hourglass begins its final descent toward the day of ultimate reckoning. This is the reason the enemy labors without rest to keep your eyes veiled. It explains the deluge of narcotics, the bloodshed, and the webs of lies that drown your streets in chaos. Do not be deceived. The most colossal robbery ever committed across the annals of time was not for gold bullion, shimmering diamonds, or vast territories. The treasure they stole was the very essence of who you are. To subjugate a monarch, one must first construct the illusion of his impotence. To enchain a sovereign queen, one must persuade her that she is nothing more than goods to be traded. The powers of this world understood a dangerous truth. Should you ever grasp the magnitude of your lineage, the shackles would shatter and fall away by their own volition. Therefore, their primary tactic was to strip away your appellation. Pause and let the weight of this strategy sink deep into your mind. Consider why the clans of Ireland, the families of Italy, the lineages of China, and the houses of Germany all retain their ancestral titles, yet you traverse this earth bearing the surname of the slave master who possessed your forefather. You answer to labels like Johnson, Williams, Smith, and Jackson. Yet these are not your true designations. They hold no drop of your legacy. They are merely cattle brands, commercial receipts of human chattel. They stand as grim artifacts of possession. The oppressor surgically removed your tribal nomenclature and severed the roots of your genealogical tree. They erased the memory of your Hebraic fathers, replacing it with a badge of servitude designed to shackle you to historical agony while severing your spiritual link to the divine promise. Make no mistake, this was no twist of fate. It was a calculated, military-grade assault on your soul. In the unseen dimensions, a name is a vessel of dominion, a carrier of essence, and the key to legal inheritance. In the scriptures, a name is never merely a tag. It is a prophetic decree spoken over a life. If your true name remains a mystery to you, how shall you respond when the heavens thunder forth your summons? Without knowledge of your tribal origin, you remain ignorant of the birthright that belongs to you. Yet, behold the clandestine truth they labored to bury in the sands of time. When the legions of Rome razed Jerusalem in the year 70 AD, the children of Israel did not vanish. They fled southward, seeking refuge in the depths of the African continent. Their journey took them through the lands of Egypt, traversing the kingdom of Cush, until they settled in the western regions, dwelling there for nearly 2 millennia. Across those centuries, while the flame of certain traditions flickered on, others were extinguished. The written tongue faded into silence, and the holy scrolls turned to dust. The recorded lineages were lost to memory, yet specific rites survived the erosion of time, most notably the covenant of circumcision performed on the 8th day, the keeping of the Sabbath, the strict laws of consumption, and the unyielding faith in a singular creator. These ancient Hebraic pillars remained standing within African societies. Contemporary scholars have now unsealed these undeniable links. The Igbo nation of Nigeria guards sacred oral histories that trace their bloodline directly back to the lost tribe of Gad. Even their very name, Igbo, is whispered by linguists to be a philological evolution of the word Heba or Hebrew. In Zimbabwe, the Lemba people have undergone the scrutiny of genetic science, which confirmed they bear the specific chromosomal signatures unique to the Levitical priesthood. Now, permit me to unveil the intricate machinery designed for your suppression. The adversary does not fight with flesh alone. It wages war through spiritual principalities. Do not be misled. Your true nemesis is not a specific race, nor the officer on patrol, nor merely the societal structure. These are but instruments in a larger hand. They are marionettes dancing on invisible wires. The true antagonist is the dark spiritual governance, orchestrating the chaos, the ancient spirit of Pharaoh. This archetype embodies absolute domination and ruthless exploitation. Its sole mandate is to maintain the chains upon your mind, ensuring your psyche remains imprisoned even while your body roams unbound. The modern prison industrial machine is the reincarnation of this bondage. The 13th Amendment purported to end servitude, yet it carved out a sinister exception. Slavery remains legal as retribution for a crime. That legislative loophole serves as a gateway for the pharaonic order to persist, harvesting the lives of black men through the machinery of mass incarceration. Then there is the insidious spirit of Jezebel, a systemic force weaponized to dismantle the sacred architecture of the family. This influence labors tirelessly to sever the man from his ordained station as the protector and spiritual head of his home. It achieves this exile through imprisonment, premature mortality, and the glorification of discord. Once the patriarch is struck down, the household is left exposed, stripped of its spiritual covering. To shatter the family is to incinerate the future. Accompanying this is the system of poverty, a cyclical curse engineered to prevent the accumulation of generational resources within your lineage. It operates through predatory policies, crafted to siphon away prosperity, manifest in the scourge of usurious payday lenders. It is seen in financial institutions that refuse rightful ownership and tax codes that punish the laborer. This is not economics, it is systematic plunder. And finally, the spirit of death. Statistics scream the truth. Your people are claimed by the grave far sooner than any other demographic in this land, succumbing to disease, brutality, and systemic medical apathy. This architecture of mortality is calibrated to extinguish your light before your divine destiny can be realized. Recall the atrocity of Tuskegee. For 40 years, they allowed a venom in the blood to consume men from the inside out, merely to observe the decay. Lastly, we face the system of confusion. This force lays siege to your very self-concept, sowing chaos regarding your origin, your nature, and the reason you draw breath on this earth. Observe the rising tide of identity chaos sweeping through the community. The adversary understands a fundamental truth. If he can shroud your gender in confusion, he can dismantle your divine purpose. These are not random currents, they are a designed storm. Yet, the shadows failed to calculate one divine inevitability. They forgot that the clock of oppression has a celestial limit. The ancient scrolls, specifically Genesis 15:13, inscribed a deadline in fire. It was foretold. Know with absolute certainty that your descendants would wander as strangers, enslaved and tormented in a foreign realm for 400 years. But the decree also promised divine justice against their captors. Cast your mind back. When did the first wooden hulls pierce the horizon? The year 1619. Span the timeline forward 400 years, and you arrive at 2019. We have crossed the threshold. The era of endurance has ended. The season of reckoning has begun. Gaze upon the modern empire. It fractures under the weight of moral decay and political bedlam. The fortress constructed upon the weeping backs of the enslaved is now turning to dust from the inside out. Turn your eyes toward the old powers across the sea. Those who once drained a continent of its blood and gold now tremble before the tides of migration and the fading of their global crown. They are choking on the bitter harvest they sowed centuries ago. Understand this truth. Any other lineage subjected to such a relentless furnace would have vanished into the ashes of history. Yet you did not vanish. You flourished beneath the lash. In the darkest pits of human suffering, you wove tapestry and song. From the crushing weight of chains, you birthed the rhythms of jazz, the soul of the blues, and the glory of gospel. This defiance is not merely biological resilience, it is undeniable proof of a supernatural spirit. Come, let us peel back the veil and examine the sacred ciphers hidden in plain view. 400 is the biblical arithmetic of the crucible. The fire is extinguished, the refinement is done. The number 12 signifies the architecture of divine rule. Consider the 12 tribes. When this sacred assembly aligns, the very dominion of the Most High materializes on the earth. Contemplate the color black. In the ancient texts, it is not cursed but crowned with mystery and infinite depth. The inner sanctum, the Holy of Holies, was a place of sacred darkness. Black is the hue of the fertile earth from which all life springs. Then there is purple, the undisputed shade of majesty. Your forebears were draped in this imperial color. You are a dynasty of priesthood. Remember, a monarch stripped of his throne remains a monarch in his blood. Behold, the eagle. It represents higher vision and the mastery of the wind. You were never meant to scratch the dust like common fowl. You were designed to navigate the stratospheres. Behold, the lion. Unyielding courage and sovereign power. You are of the lineage of the Lion of Judah. You are the hunter, never the hunted. The primal letter is Aleph. It stands as the symbol of supreme strength, the leader, the mighty ox. The ox is the beast of burden that breaks the fallow ground. For centuries, your strength has dragged the heavy plow of the global economy. You toiled in the fields of history without praise or payment. But do not forget, the Aleph is also the number 1. You are the Genesis. You stand at the very forefront of the divine's architectural blueprint for humanity. When the Creator sought to manifest his thunder, his compassion, and his very image, he selected a specific people. If your bloodline is woven into that ancient covenant, then you are the living vessel through which heaven's glory shines upon this world. Here is the secret the masses overlook. The adversary hijacks these very tokens to adorn his corporate seals, his money, and his stone monuments. He steals your iconography because darkness cannot create, it can only mimic. Look at the capital's great spire. It is nothing less than a stolen Egyptian obelisk. Why? Because this land has become the spiritual successor to Egypt. It is the modern house of captivity. The unblinking eye atop the pyramid, on the currency, is the eye of Horus. They flaunt these ancient sigils openly to taunt your ignorance. They are silently declaring, "We build our empire with the bricks of your heritage, while you sleep through the theft." But the moment you decipher the code, you reclaim the scepter. You begin to perceive the spiritual war raging in the atmosphere. Why is this revelation pouring out in the year 2026? Because we have entered a kairos moment, a divine intersection of time. The prophetic hourglass has run out. The 4-century sentence, spanning from 1619 to 2019, was the absolute limit. We now walk in the aftermath, the phase of divine dismantling. The digital age has shattered the monopoly of the gatekeepers. Truth flows like a river. The ancient seals are snapping open. The spiritual atmosphere is charged with electricity. The drug of false doctrines is losing its potency. A hunger for raw, undiluted reality is waking you from your slumber. Why is this awakening vital? Because the pillars of the global financial temple are trembling and cracking. The system is a mirage built on debt and deception. You must anchor yourself in your true identity, or you will be swept away when the illusion dissolves. Prepare for the heat to rise. They will brand you with labels of madness and hatred to silence your voice. Only deep roots in the soil of truth will withstand the storm. The great assembly of the 12 tribes is no longer a dream. It is motion. From the Americas to the Caribbean, the scattered seeds are vibrating with recognition. The valley of dry bones is rattling with the sound of resurrection. The horizon signals the return of the King. He does not return for a defeated victim, but for a people fully awake and walking in their ordained authority. Possessing this light carries a heavy weight. Ignorance is no longer a refuge. Once the truth enters your ears, you are bound by it. You have become a guardian of the mystery, a watchman on the spiritual wall. The path may be lonely, and the world may call you insane, but you see what they cannot. Shadows will always cling to those who construct their fortresses upon the sands of victimhood, and they will assault you for daring to stand. When they reject you, realize it is merely the universe confirming your authenticity. If the arrows of the adversary are flying thick around you, take heart, for it proves you are hovering directly over the heart of the mission. You have been summoned to a higher duty. Your own bloodkin and the companions of your youth may starve for this illumination, yet you must walk with discernment. Do not scatter your sacred diamonds into the mud where beasts may trample them. Begin your labor with inquiries that open the mind, rather than commands that close it. Let the ancient scrolls speak, not your ego. Walk in charity, possessing the cunning of the viper and the gentleness of the morning bird. Carve these moments into history. Preserve the records before the winds change. Weave strong bonds with the tribe, and find the others whose eyes have snapped open to the dawn. For if the sentry on the wall beholds the gathering storm and leaves the horns silent, the crimson stain of the fallen rests solely upon that sentry's soul. The signal has been fired, and you have been alerted. This is your divine commission. Etch into the scroll below, "I am awake," and let this serve as the muster call for the surviving remnant. Strike the sign of approval to force the invisible machine to acknowledge the light. Spread this vision not merely as a digital bridge, but as a transformative experience for the weary. Fix your gaze upon the grand architecture of the 2026 plan. We bind ourselves together through deeds, erecting temples of wisdom and learning hubs. Forge circles of commerce to reclaim our sustenance and build collective abundance. Tend to the garden of the mind, uprooting the thorns of sorrow planted by the pain of our ancestors. Pour water onto the roots of our own vineyards to bridge the chasm of lack. Now, I brand this decree upon your spirit. This transcends mere petition, for it is a solemn covenant. This is a holy vow spoken into the ether. I reject the masks they forced upon me. The chains of servitude do not define me. The lie of lesser worth crumbles into dust. No hex binds my steps. I am of the ancient blood. I am the Prince of God. The lineage of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, flows like a river through my veins. I cast off the labels of captivity and the titles of shame. I shatter the silent treaties made with despair and silence the dark whispers haunting my bloodline. I pledge by the throne of the Almighty that I will carry the torch of reality. The slumber of ages has ended, and I shall never close my eyes again. I refuse to bend the knee to the grand deception. I vow to devour the ancient texts, uncover the buried past, and pass this fire to my offspring. Hear this statute. I declare the iron collar is pulverized, falling from my throat and the throats of my descendants. The wheel of scarcity turns backward and vanishes from our midst. I proclaim that the machinery of the grave holds no jurisdiction over my house, my kin, or my heritage. I announce the gathering of the scattered 12 tribes. I seal this pledge in the scarlet covenant of Yeshua, the Lion of Judah. Captivity is a memory. I am no longer bound. I am the heir. I am the child of the promise. My eyes are open, my spirit is unbound, and I have become a terror to the realm of shadows. Henceforth, I tread with dominion under my feet. The adversary grasps at smoke, for the loop is severed, and the fetters lie in ruins. I am Israel, I am selected, I am the conqueror, so be it. The deed is written in the stars. You are now tethered to the absolute truth. Liberty is your atmosphere. Stride within it, inhale its essence, and let it shape your tongue. Welcome to your rightful place, Prince of God. Welcome to the sanctuary. This visual journey delves into a scripture-rooted saga of Genesis, purpose, and celestial will, filtering ancient verses through the lens of history and spirit. We present this subject matter not as idle conjecture or fleeting theory, but as a grand odyssey tracing how belief, resilience, and destiny are threaded into the very fabric of mankind's existence within the holy text. This platform stands as a storyteller of the sacred, devoted to excavating the profound mysteries buried beneath the surface of history and verse. Our calling is to unveil narratives that provoke deep contemplation and fortify the pillars of your belief, summoning the observer to wrestle with the eternal concepts of self, honor, and the architecture of the divine design. These works are woven together solely for the enlightenment and wonder of the audience, distilled from scriptural motifs and the echoes of the past. Let it be known that no malice, division, or enmity toward any faction of humanity is harbored within these words. If this frequency resonates with your spirit, bolster this sanctuary by marking your approval. Disperse this message to the winds. Etch your wisdom in the scrolls below and align yourself with this movement for the days ahead. To receive further revelations and potent chronicles from the ancient paths of faith,